Hi, Gary.
Hi, Carl.
Thanks for joining. Thanks for getting on the call. Just before
Thanks
we
for
get
having me.
started, very glad to have you on. Just before we get started, just want to give a quick reminder for anybody watching just to like and subscribe. And Gary's just told me I didn't know about the notification bell. So like and subscribe and click on the notification bell so that you know when we're releasing new videos. And also this will be available as a podcast for audio only if you prefer to listen to the audio. This and all the other episodes will be available on podcasts, on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and wherever else. So there'll be a link for that underneath the video if you want to check that out. We're with Gary today. So Gary, if you could start with a bit of an introduction.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Thanks for having me again, Carl. So really, my background in the education sort of field at the moment really started when we moved from London up to the Midlands, and we couldn't get our kids into school in time because we moved sort of like the back end of August. So we just inadvertently decided to homeschool.
Okay.
But previous to that, a friend of mine told me, because he was homeschooling his kids as well. And then, we looked into it, we went into it, and we didn't really get a lot of time to prepare because, as some parents have seen with the COVID, you just feel like, you have to do everything right now, and you've got to have all the resources, and they're going to fall behind and all this. So it was a little bit of a mishmash, but there was a lot of stuff that we got out from it. And one of the main things was that if I saw that if we gave our kids the time and opportunity to focus on stuff that they really liked, then they were able to sort of do it for sort of 2 to 3, 4 hours without even asking for a break. They didn't even come up for air or anything. And that was a massive eye opener. Alongside that, I was reading John Taylor Gatto, so Weapons of Mass Instruction and Dumbing Us Down. So really, my light bulb really came on there. Previous to that, I'd done like mentoring, even up to recently. I do mentoring and work with young people that are in the care system, and also just couple months ago, I was working in a primary school as a teaching assistant. So I was able to see sort of how it really works, sort of from inside, and it is as scary as I thought it was. But when you see it in action, it's quite breathtaking in the sense of how far things can really go, and the acceptance that people just say this is okay, this is a good standard, to sort of give information to our kids. So that's the main sort of background for me, more from a sort of parental aspect, not necessarily from a professional, i.e. like a school teacher or whatever the case may be from there. But I am planning to sort of have more, I don't want to say more of a say, but I just want to do something about it, because it's all well and good sort of standing in, for example, with football, and you've got your armchair fans, you've got fans in the crowd, so you should do this, that, the other. And then when they actually get onto the pitches, it's a different story.
Of course, yeah.
So, I don't want to be that guy on the sideline saying, we should do this reform, we should do that, So I'm planning to sort of try and get a couple of projects up and running. There's a great guy out there, David Hollins. There's Fiona Taylor and Asita in Nigeria. So there's quite a few people out there that we're trying to sort of put stuff together and trying to get some projects going. But that's my background, more from parental side.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. There's a lot there that I think we'll probably come back on. In particular, it'll be interesting maybe to hear a little bit about the work you did in the care system as well. When before I became a teacher, I was interested in care work, and a number of my family members are in care work of one kind or another. There's some in the social care, there's some in nursing. So it was always kind of an attractive line of work for me anyway. And I kind of thought that's where I would go. And I did a little bit of youth work back in the UK before I moved out here to Indonesia. And then obviously I ended up teaching. So I'm interested in hearing a little bit about the background you have in care as well, before we look more at the teaching you do. So can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so it was about 2018. I was like sort of between jobs, but I'd always done some form of youth work anyway. So
Okay.
in my local community, I did like volunteering like every Friday. We'd do football training, but it was more sort of football training, a little bit of mentoring
Yeah.
as well. So I did that, really enjoyed that. Always love working with young people because they've got so much to give, but a lot of them don't really realize how much that they can actually do.
Yeah.
So I like the process of sort of being involved in that and trying to help them unlock that, and then just sort of try to open the world to say these are the possibilities that you can do. So I worked with a company that worked with local authorities that would help young people who were transitioning either from foster care
Hmm.
or from children's homes to independent
Okay.
living. So we would sort of be with them in like a home or a flat, in a house or a flat, and sort of be with them sort of 2 to 3, 4 days sometimes, and just helping them with like life skills, cooking, budgeting, those sort of things. But also the important stuff was, just giving them a voice and giving them a bit of a platform. So, look,
Yeah.
you
Right.
can talk about, you don't have to talk about all the stuff that's really personal to you, but just little things and small little tidbits and stuff like that that we can talk about. And then I can try to give you some of my experience and say, well, maybe don't travel down that road because,
Hmm.
the end consequence could be this. Or, if you really enjoy that, then, it's okay to go and pursue it. So, maybe take them to appointments, football training, football matches, all those sort of things there. So it was really, really good. And I've been doing that for the last couple of years.
Okay.
It is. I'd have to travel up sort of north of the country, but it
Right.
was brilliant. It was brilliant. Like you'd meet loads of different types of young people
Sure.
from different, very difficult starts. A lot of them have had, and their trust level in adults is understandably on the floor.
Right. Yeah.
So it's part
Yeah.
of our job to sort of try to say, look, you can trust adults. There are people out there that actually do genuinely want good for you, and I'm
Hmm.
one of those people. Even though it's a little bit of a contradiction because I'm one of those people, but after 2 or 3 days, I'm going back home.
Right.
And
Right.
then
Right.
someone
Right.
else is
Sure.
going to come in, and they're okay. So and obviously sometimes you get to build a rapport if you get to go a good handful of times. So they may then start to disclose certain things to you, which has happened in their earlier life, and you can sort of help them
Hmm.
sort of manage that. So yeah, really,
Yeah.
really good.
Good. Yeah. And the kids that you were working with, would they have been in school as well, in mainstream school, or were they out of school?
Most of them were like probably like 16 to 18. So
Right. Okay.
either they were just leaving school or had left school and would be going to college. So some of them were more motivated than others, obviously.
Right. Sure.
And then it was just sort of trying to find that balance of, okay, well, if you're not going to go today, what is it that you can do
Hmm.
that can help you to get from point A to point B still? So
Yeah.
if you're going to
Right.
go next week, no problem, but you still got to try and do something. So
Right.
you would
Right.
try and extract some type of learning from budgeting or cooking or
Right.
cleaning or those sort of things. So you try to extract that, and then sometimes you know what some children are like, where if they feel like they're learning or they're being taught, they just switch off.
Yeah. They don't
So
want it. Yeah. Absolutely.
you've kind
You
of
gotta
got to do
gotta
it, and
trick them
then
into it.
then it's a bit clandestine. So maybe
Yeah.
about an hour later, you sort of go back around and say, well, this is
Yeah.
what we did actually,
Yeah.
and that's connected to that and stuff like that. So sometimes maybe you might talk about films or video games or whatever the case may
Right.
be, and then sort of get them to express themselves, because then obviously when it's something that they really enjoy, then it's just they just go on for hours and hours. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Right. So I wonder, from your time working with those kids, did you see anything about maybe their experience with school that perhaps contributed to your sort of disillusionment about the education system and the schools? I mean, you talked about ensuring that these kids felt they had a voice. Do you think that school doesn't do a very good job of giving them a voice, for example? How did that contribute to the way you feel now about education?
I think that's a good question. I think in the sense of the start that they had in life, it's very difficult for a school to be able to allocate the time
Right.
to dedicate to that individual on a consistent basis to help them, be heard, and then for them to then say, okay, now I'm being heard, I can now concentrate or focus on some of my work.
Yeah.
But if the young person feels that they're not being heard, or they're just really frustrated and no one's there to help them manage that, then they're going to act out enough that they're going to be able to leave the classroom. They don't have to be in that environment, and then they can just start to just deal with the stuff that's building up internally. So schools, I think there's a bit of a 6 of one, half a dozen the other, because some schools really want to try to do that. I think most schools really do, but there's obviously a budgeting issue, there's a staffing issue, there's even like a physical, we've got the staff, we've got the budget, but we actually haven't got the physical room. So there's that side of the thing where we want it, but we can't. So I think there is that part where they don't have that platform, and then sometimes the platform that they do have is their best friend that's sitting next to them. And then maybe they're talking to them about that thing that's happened at home or something, and it's like, stop talking.
Right, yeah.
And then for that young person right there, what they're talking about is really, really important, and it actually is. But if you keep talking, you have to go out. And it's just like, you understand him, but you don't
shut down,
and then that whole sort of thing goes again. And sometimes they might not be talking about something that's important, but they just want to be able to sort of express themselves, and they maybe haven't worked out the timing of, okay, time and place, and then accepted that, okay, right now is not the time and place. I still want to say what I say, but I'm going to say it afterwards. So because they've been sort of shut down for a good part of their early life, they just want to have an opportunity just to speak when they want to speak and everything else. And obviously schools in general don't permit that, because you've got to be here at this time, you've got to leave at that time, you've got to go to that place at that time, you've got to sit in that place. No, you can't sit at the back, you've got to sit at the front because you're always talking. I don't want to sit at the front because that means I can't. So
and it all builds on itself, right? Because if, as you've already suggested, you know, a lot of these kids, because of the kinds of experience that they've had, whether it's at home or just in the broader community, they've got a low trust threshold for adults anyway, a lot of the time. And then if their teacher is shutting them down and not allowing them to have a voice, it's just going to build on that sense that, you know, look, these adults, these teachers, they're not interested in me, they don't care about me. It only kind of spirals out of control there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because even if they do find that one teacher or teaching assistant or, you know, dinner lady that does actually want to listen to them and does try and find time to connect with them, still just, they'll always be testing them.
Yeah, right. So right.
It lasts for weeks and months sometimes, and then you might get one little breakthrough. And then when you get that breakthrough, you can't sort of charge in, because you want to be, I want to help and do this. You still got to take that baby step, but it's a bit of a chicken egg, because if you don't take that baby step and then you both realize, okay, the young person's just opened the door to you and you don't go in,
chance,
then you've not taken the chance. Then they're like, well, now you're out. So now if you're out, then that's it. So
and this is so sort of counterintuitive to normal relationship building, right? So it's not something that you would naturally behave that way necessarily, unless you were very kind of aware of this as a technique, as an approach. It doesn't come naturally, I think, to just the way that we interact with one another, right?
That's it. And you know, like a lot of these young people have spent, like I said, the early parts of their lives, you know, like verbally defending themselves, you know, physically defending themselves sometimes from people that they trust. So they just haven't understood how the wider world actually works. You know, even like the little nuances of, you can't, just because you want to get your thing done, you can't push in. Right. I know you want to go. I want to go, but we have to wait. Like that's just how it goes, you know. And then if you want something, if you say please or thank you, that person's not going to take liberties with you because you said that. It's okay to do that. And it's just, no, I don't want to do that because, so they may feel like they will look small, but it's like, no, in the wider world, people actually really like that, and it's
That's
and it's
right.
a good
Yeah.
thing, and people
And also,
remember
there you
that,
go.
and then no, so I was going to say, and people remember that, and then when you come back to the
Yes,
shop,
that's right. Exactly right.
everyone
And
wants to
that's that's about building relationships. And most of us, of course, are fortunate that we spend our early years developing the skills for building relationships. Whereas some of these kids, the perhaps you're talking about, they've had to spend their years developing defense mechanisms, right? Developing a completely different set of interactions.
Yeah, absolutely, because the world that is thrust upon them is
It's a hostile
so,
world, right?
yes, it's hostile, and it's almost like a parallel world. Like inside the home is something else. It's like,
Right.
completely different planet. It's like Mars, and then outside it's like Venus. So it's just like, well, where's Earth?
Yeah, right.
Because and then they're trying to navigate their way, and then you've got people like yourselves or me and other professionals saying, this is Earth here. And they're like, no, it's not, because
Yeah, don't
I
recognize it at
think
all.
because I think I still have to operate
Yeah,
outside as I do inside,
yeah, right.
because my mum's treated me a certain way, my dad's treated me a certain way, or my uncle or whoever it is, maybe everyone, lots of people in the family have treated me in a way where I now understand that that's wrong.
Yeah,
So I have to then now treat the world the same way to make sure that I don't get hurt anymore.
yeah,
And it can take a really, really long time.
yeah.
So I think that's why people that are involved in that line of work have to be really, really passionate about
Yeah, right.
children. You can't just turn up to that one and just collect
No,
money and go home,
no.
because you may not consider it, but your lack of interaction and your lack of care, these kids are picking it up in like 2 or 3
Yes, right.
minutes flat,
Yeah, yeah.
so they know when
And
you're
if
not
anything,
interested in them.
that's it. And if anything, they are, while they might not have the skills to develop healthy relationships because they've never really had the chance to learn them, they tend to be very receptive, I think. So the minute that you show them you're not interested, or the minute that you show them that you're not happy about something, my observation has been that these kids have learned to pick up on that very, very quickly and to shut down very, very quickly, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I worked with a young person in a children's home for about 2 months, and we kind of sort of got on straight away, because we shared, we both like video games and everything else. So we kind of had that, and he was from a similar background like myself, like he's on his dad's side. So we kind of got on, and I was able to extract little things from him, little things. And then I started to ask him just really sort of small probing questions. And he turned around to me and he smiled and he goes, I'm not answering that. And then he just walked away. But I
Right.
thought, okay, we're starting to make a little bit of inroads where I can tell it's something difficult for you, but at least you've allowed me to open the door and hold it
Yeah.
open. So yeah, they are really receptive. And I think what they want is consistency.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to be horrible, then just be consistently horrible.
Right.
So at least they know where they
Right.
stand. But if you're going to be nice, then be consistently nice. But
Right.
you make one slip up, if you're like one of the good guys, you make
Yeah.
one slip up.
Yeah.
That's it. You got to
So
start
true.
again.
Yeah. So true. So is that something you're still doing now? Now that you've moved up north, are you still doing the same, or is that something you left?
No, it's something that I left. I was doing it recently up to like the last 4 months, no more. Sort of January, February, I was doing that. And then I went to the primary school recently.
Yeah, right. Okay.
And now, now in September, I'm going to be going to another primary school, teaching assistant as well there. So I'm not doing that, but I've got 2 kids and they're sort of teenage years. So now I'm trying to mentor them, but I'm trying not to mentor them because they're my kids. So I have to be, my approach has to be different.
Right.
And I have to, and it's almost like, you have to sort of back off a bit more and then let them develop and do that thing, as opposed to sort of going into that space and then being in that space, but still sort of having that backing up, but not too much where the young person thinks that they don't care, where when it's your own kids, they when you've been a certain way, they kind of know, okay, yeah, my dad does like me.
Yeah,
my
right,
mum does.
right.
So you can kind of do that, but then they will still want their own. They will still want their own space anyway. So
yeah, of course. So how do you reconcile that with the homeschooling then? With the, you know, you're basically playing several roles, right? You're a parent, you're a mentor, you're also a teacher. How do you reconcile that? How do you delineate between those roles that you play?
that's a good question. I think it's just in a sense of when it comes to the homeschool. I mean, like the kids have gone back to school now, and they have done for a few years. But I still they still have that sort of mindset. They still have that sort of philosophy because they know how I feel about it. So
Right.
even today, like we got a video game the other day. I don't know if I can say it, but it's a popular game on one
Yeah,
of the
you can.
popular
Yeah,
platforms.
it's fine.
Okay, so we got Ghost of Tsushima.
Oh,
It's a
yeah, okay.
phenomenal samurai game, and I
I've only seen
really love.
videos so far. I haven't played it yet.
Oh yeah, it's brilliant. We've been playing it since it came out. So I really like Japan and all the culture and everything else. Have done for years. Love anime, all that sort of stuff. And my daughter really likes Japan as well. She was doing Japanese. So today I said to her, right, there's 2 videos I've seen on YouTube that talk about the Mongol invasion and actually the real Ghost of Tsushima. So what I want you to do is, watch those 2 videos and then take some notes about that and then write it up. Because I know that that's what she likes.
Right.
I know that she'll be able to go on about that and just do that for ages. And then sort of separating that and then being a dad is the thing where I've got to recognize when it's going too far or when she's not giving herself enough of a break, or she might need a little bit of a pep talk, or she might just need a little bit of an arm around the shoulder.
Yeah.
So all of that kind of, it sort of meshes. Sometimes you can put one hat on and sometimes you have to, but it kind of just sort of meshes and sort of flows in from one to the other. So,
yeah. Have you had any challenge on the other side of that coin where your parental relationship's been in tension? Maybe you're angry, maybe something's happened at home, but then you've also got to, oh, well, now I've got to step into the teaching role because it's teaching time. Or do you take a break from the teaching in that situation, or what?
I don't know. I don't think as parents you ever really do take a break from teaching, because I think you're always like inadvertently teaching anyway.
Yeah.
But in a sense, if I get frustrated with something, then I'll just sort of step away from it, and then I'll just leave it, because then my own sort of personal frustrations will get in the way of the learning, and then it'll be like, then the confused message will be, well, my dad's upset. Is he upset because I'm not doing the learning, or is he upset because I haven't cleaned my room? Like, what's the two?
Exactly right.
So, so I have to give it a bit of time to say, okay, so you've done that, and now, and you also sort of have to sort of change, like, your tone of voice, the expressions on your face, so that they know, okay, that thing's finished now. Now we're focusing on that. And again, it goes back to, what we were talking about with the young people of, showing that interest. I've got to be able to communicate that I am really interested in what you're doing. Yeah. And it's not about what happened before. It's about what we're doing now. So,
Yeah, good. And did you have, when you were teaching your own kids, did you have much of were you part of a network or anything like that? Were you just doing it on your own? Were you interacting with other homeschoolers?
I was more doing it by myself.
Yeah.
Because there's such a wealth of information out there. And I was loosely sort of talking to some people online more about just little bits of guidance and stuff like that. But I found out that the amount of information that's out there, in the sense of, like the usual suspects, Khan Academy, IXL, YouTube. I mean, that's it, really. You could do anything for any amount of time just using those 3 platforms.
Right. Yeah.
So from there, you just sort of found that you can have the support in terms of if you get really stuck with something, or if you're following an absolute curriculum and you really want to do it in that particular way. But I was trying to do the sort of unschooling, and then do the homeschooling. So as you probably know, like the unschooling is a thing where it's just like you just take them out of that environment completely, work at your pace, work at your thing, and don't worry so much about the mechanisms, the rules and 45 minutes, and now you've got to stop doing this
of course.
and do that. So there is a ton of help out there, but I didn't really engage too much, and that's probably something that, on reflection, I probably should have done. But I think you're just kind of thinking like, am I doing it right?
Yeah.
Then you can get a bit belligerent and be like, well, I'm going to just do it my way.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. What do they know anyway, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you started doing it, first of all, and you said you were kind of in a bit of a kind of limbo situation with the move and stuff as well, right? So when you started the homeschooling, or that unschooling model, what was one of the kind of the biggest question, or the biggest kind of uncertainty that you had when you got started, the thing that you were least sure about?
I think just kind of, because there's still that part of you that thinks if they're not at school, they're not progressing. So that thing there was there, like, well, if they're not spending an hour on maths a day, are they still going to be all right if they were to go back to school? Like, am I giving them the right resources? Are they taking in enough content? So you're always thinking, am I doing enough, or am I doing too much? And but what I didn't do too much of was, to my regret, was ask them on a consistent basis. Because you're thinking, well, because we're not at school, and you've got to do this, you've got to do that, and you've got to do this maths, you've got to do that amount of English, and that amount of science, and then after 2 years, I'm thinking, I didn't have to do any of that. So the thing that was there was always like, are they going to fall behind? Are they going to be able to understand, are they going to be able to understand trigonometry?
Right. And did you, at what point did you get over that and kind of move on from that worry? Did anything, was it a gradual process? Did anything happen that kind of turned that around for you?
I think just seeing them double down on stuff that they were really interested in.
Right.
Which
they don't get the chance to do in the school, right?
No, they don't. And that's one of the things that I sort of want to be part of, to sort of change, is to give them that opportunity. But seeing, like, my son, he likes maths and computers, so we were doing the Kano computer stuff.
Okay.
And they have like programs on there that you can do, and Minecraft games and everything else. So I said to myself, right, I'm going to just leave him now. I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to say, this is what you're doing this morning, because I know you like doing that. And before I was doing like, okay, after an hour, we're going to change, we're going to do this. I thought, no, I'm going to just leave and let him do it. And no word of a lie, he was on that for about 2, nearly 3 hours. Didn't stop.
Sure.
He didn't come out of the kitchen and ask. I think he maybe just got some drink or something like that. And the same thing with my daughter as well. When she was doing Japanese, and she was like, on the YouTube videos, getting some books on the internet and getting the writing. And again, she was just on that for hours. So I was just like, well, I don't really need to really tell them what to do. They know what they're interested in, and as long as they know that they can get the resources from me and from Mum, then that's all I really need to do. And obviously they have some questions that we can answer, but other than that, they were fine. So I think from that point, when I saw that, I thought, they're okay.
Yeah, good. Well, how far apart are their ages?
So Ishmael's 16 and Hannah's, hold on, so I just got to let the cat out. 1 sec.
Oh yeah, no, go ahead.
So he's gone now. So Ishmael's 16, Hannah's 13.
So
yeah, so 3 years.
So did you, during those couple of years that you were homeschooling them, did they learn together much? Did they do much where they collaborated or supported each other?
Not really.
Yeah.
Not really. They just they liked their things. Yeah. So they'd work side by side. Right. I think more now, since they've been back at school, they've compared, oh, this is what I do at my school, this is what I do at my school. So in that sense, they sort of share notes, if you like. But when they were doing the homeschool, no, it wasn't like that.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because we want to, in the school environment, in the classroom, one of the things that I try to push, something that I feel is lacking, is the collaboration amongst students. But you can get and we'll talk about this anyway on a number of other points. I think, you know, you can get kind of stuck on a track of an ideology, because, you know, you think, well, I know what's better. So for example, you know, I know collaboration is important, but even then, when you know you're heading towards something good, heading towards something better, it's still important to remember that it might not be what the kids want all the time. So I was interested, you know, when they're in a position where they're not at school, they're not being, you know, forced into this rigid learning approach that the teachers often are putting them in, they're at home. On the one hand, we might say, oh, it's the perfect opportunity for collaborating, putting them, but they might not want to, right? They might not they might not want it.
Yeah, that's the thing. And sometimes, you know, you see that thing of, you know, competition. Yeah, I mean, that just infuriates me, because it's like, there is competition in life, but life isn't competition.
Right.
And you know, that's the thing that we don't sort of do in that environment, where you've got that perfect opportunity every single day to get kids to just, you know, mix around, you know, and just, you know, you go and work with that lot, and you go and work with that, you just mix, because everyone's got a different perspective, everyone's got a different idea, different experience. So if you share that experience, then everyone's going to benefit. But if you like, well, you know, table 2 versus table 6, it's like, where does that come from? And then when table 2 do really good, table 6 feel terrible. But table 6 had table 6 had a bunch of good ideas as well. But because they didn't get the amount of points, they think now that their ideas weren't valid. Where outside of the school walls, all ideas are valid, only the ones that actually don't really work, or not sustainable, or just not functional.
And that's it as well. You know, you talk about the points and the ideas that are valid or right, but they're usually getting points based on what's in the back of the book, right? Based on the answer key. And again, as you say, you know, in real life, you don't check your answers against the book. You check your answers against the results, right? Well, did it work? Did it help? Did it benefit anybody in any way? In which case it's valid. It might not be the standard answer, but it worked. It might have worked better than the standard answer. And this is often ignored in the classroom, right?
Well, that's the thing as well. You're right, because, you know, if you don't take the standard approach, then you're wrong.
Yeah, exactly right. There's only one answer, you know, and it's this one. Yeah.
And if someone comes and says, well, because my daughter had the same thing. She said she was in history class, and the teacher was mentioning some date, and in her head she was just like, that's wrong, because she really likes history, so she was watching, I think, horrible histories. Right. And I was a bit skeptical about horrible histories. I was just like, oh no, there must be some dodgy stuff. She's like, no, everything in there is factually accurate. And she's like, I saw in horrible histories, like he had the dates wrong. I said, so why didn't you tell him? And there's obviously that apprehension of, well, you don't want to be disrespectful to the teacher. Yeah. And you don't want to embarrass the teacher in front of the class. And then if the teacher thinks, well, she might be right, are they going to give up that? Right. Just for that, well, actually, you're right, Hannah. Yeah. And
it's a massive problem here in Indonesia where I teach, because it's a culture of deference, right? It's a culture of seniority. And so any time you're in a position where there's either an enforced hierarchy like student teacher, or just a social hierarchy like, you know, children, adults. So in the classroom, you've got both of those at play. It's very, very difficult for a student to question a teacher. And, you know, then I have on numerous occasions observed teachers misteach something, or I've walked into a classroom at the end of somebody else's lesson, I see something on the board that's wrong, you know, and the students will never question the teacher. And sometimes they'll come to me in another period, you know, they'll come to me in the next lesson and say, oh, in our last lesson, the teacher said this, and I don't think it was right. And they'll ask me, and I'll say, no, you're right, that was not right. Did you say anything? Oh, no, I couldn't say anything, because there's just the culture won't allow for it. And that's such a problem. But, you know, I think of that as being a very cultural thing here, you know, Indonesia and Southeast Asia in general, that's heavily a part of the culture. But of course, it's true in English classrooms as well, right? It's true around the world in a lot of places, right?
It is, because the thing is, even if it's not on a cultural level, it's a system level. Right. So, you know, if a child says, I'm not taking that information from you, you get sent out of the class. Yeah. You know, he's just like, no, but sir, that's wrong. And then if you were to, you know, have the bravado to go up onto the class, into the class, up to the blackboard, or that shows my age, I'm saying blackboard. If you go to the whiteboard and then, you know, write the equation out and write a different equation, and then and everyone in the class is there looking and thinking, that's actually right. Then the teacher's authority can go out the window.
Yeah.
However, if there's a culture of critical learning, critical thinking, it's okay for you to question me, but I, through my experience and my dedication, I've given more to this craft than you. Like, I'm a maths specialist. Like, that's my thing. But I'm a human being, so that means I can get stuff wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
And if the book says something, and if you're telling me it's wrong, I have to accept that, because you could be right.
Yeah.
Because the person who put the information in the book could have got it wrong as well.
Yeah.
So that's that thing of like, well, it's in the book. Well, okay, well, what is that? So does that mean that that's the only way to get to that number?
Exactly,
no,
right.
Not.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And another thing as well. Sorry, another thing as well, you know, you talked about competition, and I think there's a parallel here as well. You talked about how the way that we use or approach competition in the classroom doesn't really reflect the outside world, or certainly not what we would perhaps be aiming for. There's a parallel to that with this as well, because often teachers are very reluctant to admit that they don't know something. And if they do, as you say, they might be undermining their authority, or they might be undermining their expertise, their experience in some way. But all they're really doing, because the students know, right? The students are all sitting there saying, I think she's wrong, I think she's wrong, I think he's wrong. They're just not saying it aloud, or if they do, they'll end up in trouble. But at the end of the day, the thing has happened. The teacher has said the thing, and the students have heard the thing. So they go home knowing that the thing was wrong. But they not only do they go home, so if it damages the trust, if it undermines the expertise in any way, which it doesn't have to, but if it does, it's happening anyway, whether the teacher accepts it or not, it's going to happen. But the other thing that it models to the students is it teaches the students that they should have that attitude, right? Because all they're going to do is copy the teacher. So they will learn, oh, it seems like saying I don't know is a bad thing. It seems like admitting I'm wrong is a bad thing, because the teacher doesn't want to do it, so it must be a bad thing.
That's it. And that goes down to even, you know, myself as a parent. I had to learn and had to accept that I don't have all the answers.
Right.
And even now, you know, like my kids will be like, well, what is that? And I'm like, I don't know. Oh, and they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I haven't got all the answers. Especially, you know, like when they're young, and then every question they ask, you generally answer. So they grow up thinking, well, my parents know.
Yeah.
And now you're telling me you don't know. And I'm like, well, I don't. I mean, but I said, well, I can go and find out for you.
Right.
And then the next day I'll come back and say, well, remember we were talking about that thing? Here it is. Yeah. And I think that's that thing that I don't know everything, but I think that if we could have that in schools and that relationship with the student teacher, I think you'd kind of get more done. And I'm not talking about on an academic level.
No.
Like a kind of community level within the school. Like you'd get more done, because the kids would be more like, okay, cool. Well, we can now go home and find something, maybe bring something in.
Right.
And be like, look at this. And the teacher be like, whoa, no, I've never seen that resource before.
Right, exactly right. So there's a whole new learning opportunity, right? Yeah, exactly right.
Absolutely.
Often when students ask a question that's either not 100% in line with the objective for the day, for example, or they ask a question that the teacher can't answer, often the question is shut down, right? So don't ask that now. Now's not the right time. Stay on track, focus, something that shuts it down. And it's just shutting down a whole learning experience, because you could introduce something that then the teacher and the students all get to learn something new together, and everybody's progressed, everybody's benefited from that. But so often these opportunities are just shut down completely, and in some cases even punished, you know, reprimanded for it.
Yeah, because you know, I have like a tremendous amount of respect for teachers, you know, at all levels, because you know, a lot of them have spent, you know, 4, 5, 6 years, whatever it is, you know, getting from
right
not being a teacher to being a teacher. And,
Yeah, right.
they take, a great amount of their own personal time after school, before school, during the holidays, prepping, marking and everything else. And on top of that, they haven't got the actual time, like the physical minutes and seconds to deviate and indulge that question and go down that path. Some of them might really want to, because I remember when my son started secondary school after we did the home ed, and he really loves French. So during when we was at home, he was watching videos and doing games or whatever it was, listening to stuff. And then he went to school, I think the first or second parents even, his French teacher was like, oh, he's not really doing good at French. And we were completely gobsmacked. It's like, what are you talking about? And she's like, no, he's not. And then we asked him, and we asked the teacher, and we said, okay. So obviously we know it's textbook, do this, so on. So that didn't fit his learning style. No problem. I said, but do you not have the opportunity to teach them about the little intricacies, the little invisible stuff that you don't really see in language? And the teacher was like, no, I actually don't have the time to do that. And it wasn't like I don't have the time, like I don't want to do it, like I want to do that. She actually said to me, I would love to be able to do that, but I don't have the time to do it. So there's that thing again where it comes up of, well, if a child's really good at something, really interested in something, why don't we give them the time to do that? And then you're going to have kids that really love English, and they're going to be doing that for hours, and numbers, and they do that for hours, and so on. Some kids love art. Like, I was never good at drawing until I got to maybe 16. But that was just after practice. But in the early days, you had kids that just bang, just as soon as they got to art, doing these sculptures and paintings, you're just like, whoa, how are you doing that? But you can imagine that if they were doing that from 9 o'clock up until 1,
of course,
for a year, how much more they would progress, like how much sooner would that curve go? And obviously they're going to still have the ups and downs. It's not going to be a smooth road, but the learning, that feedback loop is just going to increase, because they're going to be like, well, okay, now I know what to do. Okay, so I spent the first 3 hours doing that. That was wrong. Next 3 hours I can correct it. They don't have to wait for the next week. So teachers don't have that physical time on the clock to
No, I think you're right. A lot of this, and and it essentially relates to one of the conversations I've just recorded with Emma as well. Similar topic came up. A lot of the time it is the system. It's not the teachers necessarily. It's the system that's limiting, and often the teachers are so overworked and burned out with things that don't really benefit the students, things that are more administrative, things that are more related to the system and the running of the school, and things that don't really enter into the academic side, the teaching, but it limits what they can then achieve with the teaching. And because of that, like with your point about art, but across all the subjects really, it's a system that's kind of oriented towards mediocrity. It doesn't allow the excellent students to excel. It also doesn't do enough in many cases to help out the students who are struggling the most and who need more support just to get up to, kind of passable levels of ability in certain subjects. It just kind of, if you're in the middle, it keeps you on track. If you're above that, you're kind of, neglected. And if you're below that, you're losing out as well. And it's just kind of oriented to everybody coming out at the end, kind of average and mediocre. And that's sort of the outcome.
Well, that's the truth. I mean, you've just said, what I've been thinking and saying for a little while is that if, for example, a lot of my analogies always go back to sport, because that's the easiest thing for me to sort of make the reference to. So, for example, like Michael Jordan, for example, widely recognized best basketball player, maybe best sportsman, Roger Federer, Cristiano Ronaldo, and so on. Those guys, and Serena Williams, and Martina Navratilova, and so on, those people are known for one thing, for one sport, being excellent at that sport. If any one of those guys would have said, okay, I really do like tennis, and I'm pretty good at it. I'm pretty good at it, but I'm also going to play some football. Actually, I'm going to do a bit of table tennis as well. And I'm going to do some archery. And then they did that for 5-6 years. we would never know about it.
That's right. Or was it Michael Jordan who went to play basketball for a couple of years, baseball for a couple of years? Michael Jordan?
He went to play baseball,
right?
Because I think his first love was actually baseball.
Oh, okay.
But he kind of sort of got, I think he even got not pushed into it, but he sort of went towards basketball.
Right. Okay.
A lot of kids, can do sort of two sports and then they choose one.
Right.
But if they didn't choose to say, okay, this is I just want to be the best at that, or I want to be really good at that, and I'm not going to do anything else, we wouldn't know about them. So
yeah, absolutely.
The arguments there of, and it even goes back to, when we're talking about skills shortages, there was that thing a few years ago, we don't have any plumbers and paint and decorators or whatever it is. And well, if you find a young person that really likes doing the plumbing, then just let him do that. If he knows, if he's got a rough idea, like, this is really interesting, or engineering, then just put them on that avenue.
Yeah.
They're going to get there. They're going to be the best. Like, for example, like Adrian Newey, I think, is he like a chief designer at Red Bull or something, like with a Formula One or something?
Okay.
But he's like, like a legend in that circle. But he's not known for anything else.
Yeah, right.
He's not known for being excellent at anything else. So excellence is singular. It's not multifaceted.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. You can be kind of average at a lot of things. Or you can really focus on one thing, and people aren't given that chance, as you say, and often it's not even recognized, right? It's not in a lot of cases, I think, and perhaps we'll never know, perhaps we just cannot know how true this is, but I suspect there are a lot of cases where somebody could be excellent, but it's just never even caught, and they're either flattened out across the subject, or they're pointed in a different direction, and we'll never know how many potential Michael Jordans there might have been who just didn't get the chance to find out their excellence.
Because that's like my thing. Because when I read Dumbing Us Down, and John Taylor Gatto was saying that genius is really common. And I thought about it, because I was sort of brought into the thing of, child genius. Every sort of 5 years or so, there's a child genius that's applied at uni, and he's just killing it at uni. He's just crushing it. And I'm thinking, like, no, like, there's more out there. Like, if you give a child that opportunity, they're going to unlock what they're going to unlock. And invariably, you're going to get a good handful that are pretty phenomenal at certain things. Like, it's just the norm, like you said. But if you're not given that time, and if you're not given that opportunity, if you've got all these obstacles in front of you, like you've got to do this test this week, and you've got to do those SATs, and you've got to do that GCSE, and you've got to do, and you're like, mate, like, I just want to draw.
Yeah.
I just want to, like, the guy, what's his name? Stephen. That young chap, well, he's not a young chap now, but he, autistic guy, Stephen something, and he had like a brilliant photographic memory.
Yeah, he drew the cityscapes,
Yeah, that guy. So I'm like, well, he's a genius.
Yeah.
But he's not known for doing anything else apart from looking at something once and doing that.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny how you use the word genius as well, right? Because if we look back over history, there are a lot of people who we'd point at and call genius. So there might be musicians, there'll be artists. We talk about someone like I don't know, Mozart as a genius. We talk about I don't know, Da Vinci as a genius. Michelangelo as a genius. These are from all sorts of different areas: music, art, design, and obviously Einstein is the kind of the icon for genius. They're not all mathematicians and physicists, though. They're artists. But when we think about the school situation and we talk about genius, it's almost only ever thought of, it's either there's the kids who's smart at maths or science, they're the genius, and then anybody else is, they're falling behind. But when we look at history, when we look at the people who have actually impacted on and influenced the world and influenced history, the people we think of as geniuses are not just in those academic subjects, right? But it seems like at school we forget that.
Well, that's the thing, because I think there's that thing from a parenting point of view where you want the best for your child. So you take the idea that the subjects that are, like the premium subjects, maths, English, science, if my son or daughter is really, really good at that, that's an excellent thing. And if they're good at art and cooking, not really, up until they start bringing some money in.
Right. Yeah.
If they
I
start bringing
suppose.
some money in through their painting or their
Yeah.
food, then
Exactly right. Yeah. I suppose there's almost a reasonable fear. I can understand the worry. Like if you look at sport, for example, if we've mentioned Michael Jordan and people like that. Obviously, there is a limited kind of space, right, for sports
yeah,
genius, because there's X number of teams and there's X number of people. There's I don't know, 12 people on a team, and there's a couple of dozen teams in the country or something like that. So it's a pretty limited scope for sports genius, perhaps. And so maybe the fear is just, well, even if they are great, the chances are so slim of getting into that spot. But it just seems like, I don't know, to be limiting that on the fear that, well, they might be brilliant, but there might just be too many people. It seems like it's maybe a rational kind of concern, but it's just limiting, and it's always kind of just shutting down excellence rather than developing it, right?
Yeah, because I understand that fear. Because as a parent, you always want the best for your kids. Like you want them to be safe. You don't want them to sort of struggle financially. You want them to have a roof over their head. You want them to be able to, buy their food, get their petrol, everything. You want them to be able to do that.
Right.
So that for them to just get a normal job, they need to be able to read, write, and do some basic equations. But maybe your son doesn't want to be an accountant. Maybe they don't want to be a lawyer. Maybe they don't want to be a doctor. Maybe they don't want to be a CEO. Maybe they don't want to be a civil servant. If they're really good, because that's the thing of, you can, in a sense of time, because that's that thing where, well, they've got to go to school from 5 up until 11, and then from 11 till 16, and that's our window. That's not your window. Like,
no,
that's part of the window. Like,
exactly
that's
right.
part of the journey. So if a child learns to read at age 2 and another child reads at age 5, and then they both get to 16, you're never going to know who.
By the time they're 20, 30, who's exactly right. Yeah.
You won't know. So in the thing of, okay, we understand what the marketplace needs.
Yeah.
The marketplace is always going to need drivers, always going to need teachers, always going to need people to do certain jobs. And I'm not saying that that's what you should want for your children, or menial jobs, if that's what you want to call them. But if your son or daughter has an interest, I think it behooves you to at least explore that realistically, and just to see how far it can go.
That's right. See how far it can go. And the flip side as well of, like I just said, well, we might worry because if I put all of this time and effort into this one skill, this one area that they're interested in, but the chance of getting picked for the team is so slim that maybe it's not worth putting. But of course, the only way they're going to get picked for the team is if you put the time and the effort in, right? If you kind of hold them back, if you do it halfway, then they're never going to get there, right? You've got to commit. Committing is the only way to get to that level.
Exactly, and then from there, the child will then pick up. Well, I don't really need to put any effort into anything, or maybe I shouldn't, because, and then that fear then transcends onto them, and then they're like, well, I'm not really gonna go because I don't really want to lose, or I don't want to get picked. But rejection is part of life. Like, not every job that I've applied for, that I've wanted, that I've got.
Yeah, of course.
So if you learn that and understand that from a younger age, you're gonna be building your resiliency. A lot more than someone who's just had everything just given to them, and we're not gonna go tennis 4 days a week. We're gonna go once a week, because if you see that you're really good, and the coach sees that you're really good, he can be like, okay, come to this tournament. You go to these tournaments and everything else, and then you don't quite make it. And like you said, you're thinking about, well, all this time, all these years, all this money I spent, we could have been doing something else.
Yeah.
But either way, you're never really going to know. So you might as well just go down one of the roads and see what happens.
That's it. Yeah. So you mentioned a few different kind of observation points as we've gone along. You talked about the homeschooling with your own kids. You obviously talked about the youth work that you've done with those kind of at-risk or underprivileged kids. You've talked about some of the books you read, particularly John Taylor, and the time that you spent in primary schools as well. And all of these, I think, seem to have contributed to the kind of the view that you have now. Which would have come first? At what point did you start to question the system? When did you start to see some of these flaws that you're now concerned with?
When my friend first introduced me to John Taylor Gatto,
yeah,
and you know, for example, like when you get something and it takes you about 6 months to actually absorb it, because it was that just like, what do you mean they can stay at home and still learn? They don't have to go to school.
Yeah, there is another possibility.
There is another way, like, and
yeah.
I was of the thing of like, no, you're gonna go to school and you're gonna do your SATs and you're gonna go to secondary and do GCSEs, because I didn't get any GCSEs, so you're gonna do better than me and you're gonna be the guy. And then when that door opened, and then I read that Dumbing Us Down, and it was the 7-lesson school teacher, and that just blew me away, because when I read what he'd written, I was like, I went through that at school.
Yeah.
And I was, it like my mouth was literally on the floor. I was just like, I can't let my kids go through that. I can't do that, because I understand where there are some teachers that are complicit to it and are happy. They understand what the system does and they've got no problem implementing that. But then there are others that are like, I can't do this to kids. And as a parent, I was like, I can't do this to them. Now you say, yeah, but you know, you send your kids back to school and everything else. I said, yeah, they wanted to go back to school, but now their perspective of it is completely different.
Of course, they're going to approach the whole thing differently, right?
Yeah, they now know from their own experience that there is a wealth of information out there. And if I don't agree with what I get in school, I now can go somewhere else and get it. I don't have to wait for something.
Yeah, so and that's one of the things that I think. Go on.
No, sorry, I was going to say, I think, well, not think, but it was definitely when I was introduced to John Taylor Gatto and John Holt and Peter Gray and Ken Robinson as well. When I saw that TED talk, that was just like, wow.
Have you read any of Alfie Kohn?
No, I haven't. No, I haven't
put him on the list as well. I think you'll find it quite similar, quite appealing. So then, after having read that and been kind of introduced to these kind of different ways of thinking, what were some of the things that you noticed during your time as a teaching assistant? What were some of the things that you saw in the real classroom that kind of resonated with what you'd been reading?
The rigidity, the rigidness, and the inflexible attitude of some teachers, in the sense of, we have to do it this way, we have to learn like that. For example, I was with a young chap who really liked geography. I said, oh, you know, what's the thing that you really like doing? Like, what could you do all day, every day? He said, geography. I said, oh, okay, no problem. So we went on to YouTube, National Geographic, Kids and everything else, and went on the internet. And he was like, yeah, we were like, yeah, look at this, all these short videos. And then we did the stuff on the countries, everything else. And then the teacher came over and was just like, okay, she brought a book. She's like, you know, find out the countries in Europe or whatever it is, write them down and then tell them back to me. I'm like, right, so you've got a resource there that is doing what you need, meaning geography in general, but it's helping him because it's like, I don't really like books. No problem.
Right.
There's stuff online. It's still got the words. Is now we've got some cartoons and we've got some short videos about cheetahs, about their life.
Right.
I think he's going to learn more in 5 minutes just watching that lot and interacting with that lot than he is with the book.
Yeah.
And it's a thing of, well, you know, we've got a job to do, so we have to do. Well, yeah, okay. Even if you do have to do that, what about saying, okay, look, if you really like geography, check out these websites.
Right, yeah, just making them aware, right?
Yeah. When you go home, if that's what you want to do. And just that thing of, you know, we have to do this and you have to sit there. And there's the other thing of like lying by omission, in the sense of, you'll walk into a classroom and there'll be like, there was this history thing on the wall, and it said about the British Empire and had all the great things that the British Empire did, and it just
Okay.
missed out huge swathes of other relevant history.
Yeah, right.
And I'm like, well, if a child comes in every day and looks at that, and they look at it and then read it and then understand it and then they move on, every time they come in and look at it, they think that's the truth because it's in the classroom.
Yeah.
The other thing that I noticed as well was the first lesson in Gatto's book, which was confusion, and that's what teachers and schools teaches is confusion. So you'll walk into a normal primary school classroom, and on one wall you've got English, and on the other wall you've got maths stuff, and on that wall you've got geography, and then there you've got computers. So we're like, oh, okay, well, what am I doing today? Well, we're doing English. Okay, so we've done a bit there. Right. So, if you had like a dedicated room that was just computer science, it was just, the kids would know, they know why they're there.
Yeah,
when they're walking into the classroom, it's like, well, we're here. And it's like it's just raining down on them.
Exactly right. It just washes over them. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. No, I've noticed that here. I was fortunate the school that I went to in the UK did have that. And I think I just sort of assumed that was the way UK schools were. And more now I find out that it's like you've described, which is how it is here in Indonesia as well. The students have their grade room, their classroom, and the teachers just come in and teach a subject, and then the next teacher comes in. Where when I was at school, fortunately, I had that. It was the teachers were situated in their subject rooms, and it was the students, we moved around, and so we'd go to the English room for English and the maths room for maths, and I think that was so much better. And I think that for all the reasons you just said, I think it's such a valuable way of doing things. Now, I must admit, I wouldn't necessarily want to be the person who has to do the arranging, and I think that's the only reason. It's a scheduling problem, I think, but it's certainly possible, and it's so much more valuable. But I think again, this is what you said about that kid who liked the geography and the teacher's insistence on the textbook as well. And this is another example. So much of what is emblematic of traditional school systems and traditional approaches to education, it's very old. And the reality is, I mean, even now there's a lot we don't know about how learning works and about the brain, but we know a lot more than we used to. And the fact is, a lot of these kind of traditional approaches are antithetical to how learning works. They ignore the way that learning works, and they ignore the way that the children or the students approach learning. They just kind of going down this track, despite the fact that we now tend to know better about how learning works and some of the approaches. It's kind of very troubling that this is still the case. I think there are a lot of teachers as individuals, and you've said this as well, teachers as individuals, I think there are a lot that are trying to do something different, that recognize this as a problem. But it's definitely a system that restricts that flexibility in the teachers, right? That keeps the teachers on track, and often doing things that they don't really want to be doing. They know that they shouldn't be doing, but they feel like they don't have much of a choice.
Yeah, because that's the thing, like I've come across a good handful of teachers that are like, we have to teach to the test. They're like, there is nothing else we can, like, we literally, when I go back again about the time that they got on the clock, they say, we actually don't have the time to do anything else apart from teach them to the test. And, you can see, like, because I spoke to one teacher and I said, would you not want to just teach history like all day? She was like, yeah, I'd love to do that. Because, that's what she went to uni, she did her thing in history. So history is her bag. And she's like, I'd love to do that, but I've got to do this, I've got to do that, and I've got to teach the test and everything else. And then even on a history level, like, I mean, when I was at school, we were doing Tudors and, what are they called? Victorians and all that, all that sort of stuff. And I'm going back in the 80s, so we're going back a fair while. And the kids are still doing that now. Now, I'm not saying that on a historical level that it's not important to know about Henry VIII and all. It's important because you're here. You're in the UK.
It's an identity thing, I think, as much as anything, right?
exactly. But there's other history in different
Yeah.
parts of the world
Yeah.
that either directly or indirectly impacts what happens in this
Yeah.
country or what has happened.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
I'm not talking about all the bad stuff and the slavery and everything else. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm just saying there's other things, there's other stuff that's happened.
Yeah.
There's other really bad people out there that have done really horrible. It's not just Stalin. It's
Yeah.
not just Hitler. There's lots of other people out there,
Yeah.
you know, that have done some horrible, horrible, horrible things to their own people, and you're not covering it. So
Yeah.
I think on that side, there's a huge opportunity that's missed there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and obviously you can't teach everything. So, you know, I mean, history is a particularly valid subject for this point, I think, because I mean, how far back does it go, right? We've got centuries, we've got millennia. You can't teach it all, but what you can do, I think, is teach a particular kind of perspective. And what we tend to get in schools from especially from history as a subject is a very cultivated perspective that says, this is the way we want you to think about history. So if you're a kid growing up in England, you know, this is the way that we want you to think about history. And it's usually going to involve a perspective that, you know, the empire was great, and you know, England is this and Britain is this and the rest of the world is that. And I think most countries have some kind of an approach like that. And obviously history is always going to focus locally to some degree because it is about identity. But I think it's the perspective that's lacking. And what I think we would want is a broader perspective that just says, you know, it's a complex world, and history has been sometimes good and sometimes not so good, and you know, there are countries have risen and fallen and empires have come and gone, and you know, the only thing that we know about anything from history is that everything's always changing, and you know, there are good times and bad times, but this isn't really everything. History tends to be taught as a narrative, like it's literature class, right? In literature, we learn that stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? And there's a direction to a story, and it feels like a lot of the time history is taught that way. But of course, that's just not how history really works, right? It's a mess.
Well, the thing is, because history invariably continues.
Right.
So
it'll be going on long after we're gone.
Yeah. So stuff that happened with the Mongols all those times before, there's a link somewhere up to today.
Right. Exactly.
Whether it's like, you know, a civilization that's, you know, really small, or an area, like there's a link there. So you can't just be like, well, that happened then, and that's it. It's like, for example, when we talk about Black history and what's it called, Black History Month. I mean, that's a joke. I mean, how can you squash everything down to a month and then you keep doing it every year?
The same month, right? Every year. The
same month every year.
What the same 5 black people that we're kind of going to learn.
Do you know what I mean? The same people. Like, really? Yeah. So then that's a narrative, isn't it? Saying that, well, it's important, but it's not really important.
Yeah, it's important for 1 month of the year.
for 1 month, and then, you know, we're going to cook. No, like, because there's Indian history, there's Chinese history, there's flipping Native American history. Right. Like, why are we not going into that? And it's like, you're not going to get a rebellion. You're not going to get millions of kids. Right. They're going to just rebel and be like, and that's not going to happen. But you're going to get kids that are going to wake up really quickly and be like, all right, we can't take everything that we're fed now. Now we're thinking critically.
Yeah, I think as well. I mean, we talked about excellence before, and how school is kind of a pipeline for mediocrity. This idea, you've mentioned Black History Month there as well, and there's a couple of things I might want to ask about that. But one thing that immediately brings to my mind is it's not really giving a model of excellence for the Black population, right? Because just like it's not really giving a perspective that if you're Black you can excel, because it's kind of saying if you're Black you're in this little kind of box that we open up once a year, and that's kind of where you belong, right? I mean, as you can have a perspective on this now and say the things that you've just said, but as a kid in school, how did this? What was it like for you being a a black kid? Were you in a white population when you were at school, or what?
I mean, when I went to school, I started in '86, finished in '91, and so Black History Month wasn't even a thing back then.
Right, sure.
That was just, it was just World War One, World War Two, Stalin, Hitler, and that was it, just rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
So, but what we were, because I grew up in Battersea in Southwest London.
Okay. Yep.
So a really culturally diverse area. And all sorts, you've got rich people on one side of the street, poor people on another. So it's just a complete mix. So then the school that I went to reflected that as well. But what I was fortunate was in our class, there's probably about 50-50, so 50% black guys, and it was an all-boys school as well.
Right, okay.
So when we got to about 1989, so we were about 14 or so, 13, 14, and we just started to wake up, like all the black kids, and then we just started to think, hold on a minute, this isn't right. Like, why are we still doing this? Yeah. And then there was, I wouldn't say like a rebellion, but we just weren't having that narrative anymore.
Just an awakening, right?
And just an awakening, and we would start questioning teachers and this, that, the other. And obviously hindsight's 2020, but if we could have articulated our points better, we may have got something. I don't know, maybe not, who knows? But in a sense where we were able to educate each other and then signpost each other to, okay, go and look at that thing, go and check out that thing. And even just that togetherness, we learned that kind of bonding. And then what happened there was that then transcended to the other guys in the class as well.
Right.
So it wasn't just like us and them, it was like all of us.
Yeah,
because they sensed that our narrative wasn't being spoken about.
Right.
And then we were being shut down with certain things and everything else. And I'm not saying that we were all angels, like far from it.
Yeah, of course.
But, our class then turned into just this, I don't know, just this mass of, upright kids, really wanting to sort of speak out on things that we knew were wrong. And teachers were wary of us because they knew that if we didn't, if you were sort of, not really doing what you're meant to be doing, we would have you up in the class. Yeah. And we wouldn't be kicking off and throwing stuff around, but we would just shut you down intellectually. Right. And I was really fortunate to be part of that. Right. So in the sense of, Black History Month, I think if Black History Month was around when we were there, by the time we reached year 9, we would have shut it down.
Yeah, much quicker.
We would have said, we ain't doing this. I know that for a fact. Like, we would have just said, we're not doing this. Yeah. We want Black history throughout the whole year.
Right.
Now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like I said,
you'd almost think that for in any other of the events, that just the Black people didn't exist, right? There's this story and there's that story, and then there are some things that involve Black people, as if the Black community, the Black population was just completely absent. It's not just that they're not celebrated as being leaders or being great. It's a complete absence, right?
Well, the thing is, exactly, because I think if you think about it, if you show 13, 14-year-old boys and girls of, historical Black leaders, that were wealthy, that ran countries, that ran armies, that were successful in their campaigns and everything else, and you did that, you continue every year for 5 years, then logic,
the whole perspective would be shifted, right? Yeah,
it's going to shift.
Yeah,
it's going to completely shift, and then no,
it's absolutely right. Another thing that I wonder as well, whether when you were at school or maybe some of the schools you've worked in or the schools your kids are at as well, did you have many Black teachers? Because this question came up recently, and somebody asked, how many teachers of color did you have? And I thought back, and I'm from the Midlands, in the UK, and it's a bit of a mix. There's some areas that are quite diverse, and there's some areas that are not. And I was from not a particularly diverse area, but not far away from a very, much more diverse kind of cities. But yeah, when I look back at school, there wouldn't have been many black kids in the class anyway,
Mhm.
but no teachers. And I don't think in my entire school career, I don't think I had one.
I didn't have one, and I'm going back I'm going back from primary school, secondary, college. I did a little bit of uni, not one black. I had probably one teacher, I think he was from India. He was a maths teacher, and he really tried with me. And I don't want to say that I didn't get maths, because I did, but I just weren't able to practice it enough. But there was no black teachers there.
Yeah.
And somebody put, I think it was Sarah, someone put a post on LinkedIn today talking about racism in the classroom, and I experienced it firsthand, and it was completely clandestine, but
Right,
you just had that feeling. And I think that if we did have a black teacher, or if there were some around, then I think it would have had an impact. Who knows? I don't know. But even at my son's school, we're in Nuneaton, and there's no black teachers in his
right.
school.
Yeah, still now.
And
Yeah.
sometimes you get the ones where you get the sense that they mean well, but they're pushing you as a young black person, and you're like, okay, I get why you're doing it, but you need to just ease back a little bit. So you can still push me because we all understand, but just kind of just take your time. I'm going to be here for 5 years.
Yeah,
You don't have to just keep, so there's that kind of thing to it, but no black
And
teachers.
your own kids now, you said 13 and 16 before, did you say?
Yeah.
So how aware are they of their place in this? Do they speak to you about it? Are they aware of it, or are they, does it come
They're
up?
100% aware.
Yeah,
they're
right.
100%.
I would have thought so.
I had to tell, because where we are in the school that Ishmael goes or went to is probably like 97% white.
Okay.
And I said to him, I said, look, you need to understand that when you go, you're going to experience some racism from teachers and students. It's not going to be in your face. With the students, maybe, but with the teachers, it's not going to be in your face.
Sure.
You're never going to get called a name, but you're going to be able to, you'll know. And I think probably when he was in year 10 or 11, and I asked him about it, and he was like, yeah, he's experienced. And he said that you just get that feeling. You just know, because the way that they're and you're thinking, but that person did exactly the same thing as me, but but now I've got detention and they haven't.
Right.
But they did it before me. So is it a timing thing? Is it if I did it first and then I wouldn't get detention, or like where is it? But when you see a pattern, then you know what it is.
I mean, that's it. It must be a confusing process until you reach the conclusion. Obviously, this is something I can't speak to, right? So I played up a lot at school. I wasn't a golden child, and so I was in trouble quite a lot. There would have been, some of those times where it was quite confusing, where you try and work out, why did I get picked up for this one? Why was it me? And it might be, eventually you come to the realization, because I've got a bit of a reputation or one thing or another. Eventually you come to a conclusion that maybe it's less about the environment or the scenario, and it's perhaps more about the student. And obviously, that conclusion is going to come a little bit harder and a little bit faster if the reason is because, well, I'm the black student, right? And that's the reason.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that?
You just got to educate them, and you have to give them the right resources at home. You have to give them the right support at home. You have to say to them, look, you can't just have it in your head that every time something happens to you, it's because of the color of your skin. Because if that's your only thing, then you're not going to pick up when you were actually misbehaving.
Right.
Maybe you were being a complete idiot.
Yeah.
And you deserved the detention, but it wasn't because of that. So if you're only going in with that on your head, then that's what you're going to see. You're going to be completely blinkered. But if you're like, okay, that could be a reason, and I have to be aware of that. But if I behave and do what I'm meant to do, then you're not giving anyone any ammunition. And then when they do it, then it's obvious to you why it's happened. So, we give them, Akala's written a brilliant book, Natives. Ishmael's read that. Hannah's read that. We're always talking about, race, obviously the George Floyd stuff that happened.
Yeah, sure.
Huge conversations around that. And also, just again, just look at your environment, just look around, like observe people. Don't just be a wanderer in the street.
Right.
You've got to be looking and thinking, but then also don't just obviously only have that as your thing. Well, that happened because I'm black.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
No, it didn't. Like, if the shop says take your hood off, mate.
Right, yeah.
Like don't just be like, no, I don't. Well, yeah. And then if you get in trouble and you ask, no, it's not, because you didn't take your hood off. Like, just take your hood off.
Right.
But there's those things there where you've got to separate. So you've got to play by the rules. If you do play by the rules, you should be okay.
Then,
if you play by the rules and something else happens, and you've done your part, then you know where it comes from.
Right. So getting back onto some of the broader picture then. You are now moving in to do some work that perhaps responds to some of these things, some of the weaknesses that you've seen, some of the things that you've observed in the schools and books that you've read. What's some of the work that you're moving towards? And you've got a couple of projects coming up.
Well, there is one project that I can't divulge just yet.
Sure.
But it's cool. But my main one, my personal one, is what I want to do is develop education centres across the world that give children the opportunity to, like we were saying before, focus on a particular thing for a given period of time.
Right.
Coupled with that, what we want to do is support them, emotionally as well. So they've got it's kind of like stress management, trauma management as well. So if they're going through a tough time or have been, they've got a person or a team and a place to actually go to deal with that.
Okay.
And to sort of work with that. So it's not just about academia. But the main thing is, and then what we want to do with these education centres is not just have them as places that we come to learn. It's actually like a community centre more than anything.
Yeah.
So, we want to sort of try and attach places where people can come and hang out and share ideas and all these sort of things. But the main thing is about developing places where they can come, and if they want to do, for example, it would be like you do maths, English, and computer science to sort of start. And then everybody would do those three in the first part of the day. So like you were saying about those kids who maybe don't get it but can't get up to the passable level, everybody will be at the passable
Still bringing
level.
Them up, yeah.
Intention. So sorry, just I'm using my phone and got a phone call.
That's right.
So everybody would get to a passable level. So then in that, obviously we'd find out who likes what. Okay, second part of the day, kids that want to do maths. Okay, there's a room over there, you can go and do maths for the rest of the afternoon. English, go and do that. Computer science, go and do that. And then what we're hoping is that if that's able to carry on, that carries on for 6 months, a year, some kids are going to just be like, whoosh.
Sure.
In like 2 months, they're just going to be up there.
Mm-hmm.
Others, not. But okay, you move at your pace. Yeah. When you know or you feel I'm ready for some harder work or more challenging work or more challenging learning, then we open the door for that. If you feel that you're still not quite there, then okay, we're still working with you there. Not like, okay, we've been doing, trigonometry for 3 weeks, now we're moving on. The kid that likes trigonometry but doesn't quite get it is now lost now.
Right, yeah.
Now they can never go back to
That's
that.
it. That door is closed, right? Yeah.
Yeah, the door's closed. So, so I'm just turning up my volume. So
no problem.
There we go. So the door's closed for that. So that's what we want to do. We want to just keep the door open at all times, but work with the parents as well, so we understand the child, the young person, what their learning style is, where's the areas of improvement that's needed, What do they
Yep.
want as a parent?
Right.
What does the community need? Maybe the
Yeah.
community needs, plumbers or something like that,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
wherever it is. Okay, so maybe we can incorporate some stuff that works towards that. So it's not just we're here and we produce kids like, in a factory.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We want to, for them, once they leave the classroom, for them to be able to go back
So this
and
idea of like tying the
contribute.
education, tying the learning to the community in a lot of ways. Yeah. Have
Yeah,
you thought one idea that I have well, I've not yet tried it. I'm hoping to implement it when the schools open back up, and obviously with the current pandemic situation, that's pushed off a little farther into the distance now. What I'd like to do, and what would perhaps fit with that, I wonder if you've thought much about it, is as well as having the teachers teaching their subjects, also having community members come in as kind of teachers. So have somebody come in who works in a particular field or who plays a particular role in the community, so that the maths lesson doesn't have to just be taught by the maths teacher, but you can have somebody come in who works in finance, or somebody come in who's an investor, or somebody come in who represents that subject in use in the broader community. Is that something you thought about?
yeah, that is, yeah, because we were sort of thinking about the same sort of thing as well, because that different perspective and being able to, put a real life person, a real life set of situations onto the learning is what is just going to take you through the roof. Because in a maths thing, if you don't learn about money, and then you only learn about money when you leave, and you're 16, 17, 18, and now you're being told, oh, you can get a loan. You're like, what do you mean? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
They're talking about 15% interest. What's interest?
Yeah.
But if they were taught that or
Absolutely.
introduced that from age 8, when they're 12, they already know. They don't need to be taught. I know what interest. No, I've got no interest. No, thank you.
Yeah.
I'll make my own money. And then the thing of, well, here's a guy, Warren Buffett. How many kids have heard of Warren Buffett?
Yeah. Right. They
Not
know
many.
they know the sports stars, they know the singers, but
Yeah.
they don't know. Yeah.
They don't know Warren Buffett, and they don't know what he did to get his money.
Yeah.
Most kids know about Bill Gates or Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
But you don't know about Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett's got a car, one car. He hasn't got a fleet of cars. He's got one car.
Right.
And the car's just a normal car.
Right. Yeah.
It's not like a Zonda or something like a Pagani. It's nothing like that. It's just a normal car. But he's like richest man in the world.
Yeah.
But if you're not introduced to these type of people,
Right.
or people don't come in that will tell you about these type of people, then when you get to 18, 19, 20, it's just like a completely new world. Where if you were learning that,
That's exactly right. Yeah. You spend 12 years just isolated from the broader community in the classroom, and then you graduate from school and you leave that world behind and move into a new world. I mean, I remember when I was in school, you would talk about real life, right? You talk about the school and then real life. Oh, what are you going to do when you enter the real world? And school was this completely separate universe, separate from the real world. And there's such a big disconnect between what the school environment was and what the day-to-day events of the school day were, compared to then, as soon as you become an adult, there's like a switch clicks and it's okay, now you need to live in this environment.
Yeah. And that's the thing, because there's no preparation for that, again, because there's no time,
right?
And there's not any opportunity for that. So it's like you're sort of damned if you do, damned if you don't, because if you don't, then you're going to get it in the neck from parents and from local government.
Right.
And then if you do, then you that you're not really preparing the kids fully. Like, they're going to get the basics. They're going to know how to read and write and do some maths equations. But for a child that needs to know how to navigate the world, county lines, for example, huge issue.
Right.
There probably are schools out there that are teaching it, but outside of it being maybe like a 1 day, 2 day training, like what else is there really that's going into that? Like, you need to get deep on that. You need to really go in on that and have that as a thing. Gangs, gang violence, all these sort of things. Like, you need to cyber security. You can't just have it as like, yeah, we did a little bit. No, you need to go deep onto that. You need to really,
yeah,
obviously, be careful, do your safeguard and everything else, but it just has to be part of the,
yeah.
because like you said, we're in a different world now. I
Absolutely.
grew up when there was like RM Nimbus, and that was the thing,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, right.
RM Nimbus, Spectrum, and Commodore, and
Yeah,
now
right.
I'm talking to you on my phone, on a
I
mobile
know.
system.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Yeah.
you know,
So what's your idea for that project, this sort of community-centered initiative that you've just described? Is that something that would be parallel to the school system, something that would lead to, you know, would there be exams involved? Would there be accreditation involved? Or is this something that would be outside of that system? Or what do you think?
I think it'd be a combination of the two. There would definitely be accreditation, because people are going to need that, you know, because people want to know, employers want to know,
Yeah, right.
okay, what you've done has been recognized.
Yeah,
As far as exams, I'm not a fan, but I understand that it's necessary to a point. So I'd probably prefer assessments
yeah.
as
I think
opposed
with
to
with
tests.
with accreditation, even, you know, there's more and more opportunity now for accreditation without examination. I think. I
Yeah,
mean, Ofqual in the UK in particular, a lot of their qualifications are not exam based. You know, they are assessment based. So I think you can do a lot with assessment and still be accredited. I think that the examinations that we're familiar with from schools are more just a kind of stuck cycle than they are even a requirement of the accrediting bodies. I think the accrediting bodies have actually moved on, and the schools have kind of stuck in their ways. Yeah, I think if you're introducing a new model that doesn't do that, I think it's still very, very feasible to be accredited without the exams.
yeah,
Ofqual, as I say, Ofqual, which regulates accreditation in the UK anyway. It's not an exam. Most of their qualifications are not exam based, and you can end up with students who are coming out of a much more practical education with officially regulated qualifications that are still going to be valuable if they do later want to go into university, if they want to, you know, jump on an apprenticeship, if they want to get straight into an internship. These are the kind of qualifications that are actually more valuable, I think, than the exams. But yeah, as you say, for some reason, kind of stuck in this cycle of exams where year after year after year, it's just more of the same. But I
yeah.
think you've got a model there that yeah, are you thinking of the UK first? You said you want to develop these around the world. Where do you think you'll be starting?
I'm kind of thinking about Africa first, really.
Okay.
Um, yeah, UK, definitely, for obvious reasons, but um, I see Africa as a good place to start.
Yeah, good. I don't know enough about Africa to have anything to say, but I think it's certainly something that I mean, I can't think of anywhere that wouldn't benefit from a model like that, right? It seems like something that you'd want pretty much anywhere in the world, and it would be a break from the tradition, but a welcome break.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. I think it's also giving parents an opportunity to see potentially what your son or daughter can really do.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
what is it that they're really good at? And I think most parents have got a very good idea of what their kids are really interested in and what they're really good at. But again, it goes back to what we were saying of you want to steer them down that road of safety where, you know, if you get your GCSEs, then, you know, it's easier for you to get a job, which is true.
yeah, yeah,
But then if you go and you get the A levels and you go to uni, then you can get. But when you go to uni and come out, it's a lottery. I'm sorry, you can come out with
yeah,
your first
yeah,
or your 2-1, but you got no guarantee because the other 40 kids that was sharing a classroom with you, you are after like 3 jobs.
That's exactly right. Yeah,
40
and
of you.
everybody's the same, right? Everybody comes out of it pretty
Yeah,
much the same because they haven't had a chance to try anything different. They've been on the pipeline, right?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So Africa, I've got a good friend of mine, Asita and
Okay.
Emenka. He's out in Nigeria, and we're sort of working together to sort of try and get this started.
Brilliant.
But yeah, we're definitely hopeful. So hopefully we can get something going. Maybe next year, probably. Obviously, we're
Brilliant.
back with the back end of this year now, so
Yeah.
we'll see.
Brilliant. Well, maybe once you've got some foundations in place, we can come back and have a look and have another chat and see how it's going.
Yeah, I'd love to. Definitely,
All right.
definitely.
Good. Well, thanks a lot, Gary. Is there anywhere people can connect with you, or is there anywhere they can follow your work and as the project develops? Is there anything we can send people to?
Yeah, just LinkedIn. I'm there sort of most times. I'm posting pretty regularly now.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, LinkedIn's the place
Good.
to find me. Definitely.
Good. All right. Well, we'll put some links in the bottom here, and yeah, maybe we'll catch up again once you've got things rolling.
Yeah, definitely. We'll keep in touch as well. Anyway.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. All right. Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Gary.
All right. Thanks, Carl.
Yeah. Bye bye now.
Bye bye.